Part 3 of today's talk about the defensive secondary, and we are going to talk about breakouts. And we are going to, again, as we were putting this together and we were talking about, potential breakouts and things like that. And when you're talking about five to seven players that are going to get playing time in the secondary, maybe that number grows a little bit, maybe it doesn't. But, out of those 5 to 7 players, you've got 2 preseason All-Americans. It's like, well, they're not going to break out because they're already broken out.
2/5 of your secondaries All-Americans.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to break out.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you want to do? Win a Heisman? Like, what do you want Xavier Watts to do to break out more?
Right.
He's going to win a Heisman. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
We already tier the breakouts. That we don't have like another tier up here someplace in the clouds that we need to hit with him. So you can guarantee that we are not going to discuss either Xavier Watts or Benjamin Morrison in the breakout section, but there are some other guys that we are going to talk about.
To your point, Vince, everybody except for Howard Cross has a chance to break out to some degree in this line on the defensive line. Every linebacker has a chance to be some level of a breakout. Every offensive lineman, every quarterback, every running back, every receiver. Mitchell Evans, the only way he can really break out is if he stays healthy all year and becomes the best tight end in the country. But he's a preseason second-team All-American, right? So, like, what's the – it's like with Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison, there's literally nowhere to go from a breakout perspective. Now, can they both be better players than they were last year? Sure. Of course. But that's like you went from great to greater. Yeah. It's not – you went from good to great, and that's kind of the point. And as you said, there's different layers to this. And so when you look at them, I mean, when I talk about breakout, it's like the first guy that comes to mind is always Christian Gray. He's a guy that has a chance to be a big-time breakout player because – surprisingly, normally a lot of buzz comes around about a player who was a highly ranked recruit. And so when teams talk about, this guy could be the next in line, a lot of times they'll talk about, the guy that was a, top 100 player or a lot of big time schools went after. And that's why I'm a little surprised we haven't seen more national conversation about Christian Gray, because this is a kid who was a top 100 recruit, top 100 on Rivals, top 100 on On3. He's a guy that they beat Ohio State and LSU to land, and he's a guy that was pretty good last year. Now, I've seen a few people mention it, but not a lot of people have mentioned Christian Gray as opposite Benjamin Morrison. And so there's plenty of opportunities for Christian to kind of have that breakout season to where I've said it before, Vince, I believe he has a chance to be as good as a sophomore as Benjamin Morrison was as a sophomore. At the very least, he can be as good as Benjamin was as a freshman. That's very good. That's a very good player. But he's got to go do it. Yeah. And I think the best thing to happen to Christian Gray this offseason, the best thing to happen to him was the arrival of Chris Mitchell and Bo Collins. Best thing to happen to him, because those are 2 veteran savvy players. We saw this in the very first practice we were at, Vince. We're seeing Christian just like get beat with like kind of the little extra something on the top. Would Bo beat him with a little something extra on the top? And Chris beat him with a little something extra in his route at the top. And when I mean something extra, I don't mean speed, because Christian can fly. I mean that double savvy veteran, I'm going to do this head nod to get you to think, and then boom. And Christian's right there, but he's a second late in the complete pass.
I mean, he's learning.
And he's like, dang it, he's getting mad at himself. But I'm thinking like, bro, I know you're mad right now, but this is great for you. Because you're being like just locking down Rico Flores every snap, right? Or Braylon James, a guy that I think has a lot of talent, but is still a very raw route runner, and you can match him athlete for athlete. That's not making you better. What's making you better is there's some legitimate older veteran, know how to play the position dudes that are battling with you, and that is something where if you're going to win as much as you need to, you're going to have to learn to play the game up here just as much as you are everywhere else. And you want to know what the secret sauce is to Benjamin Morrison? Yes, he's good size, good length. He's not like elite. He doesn't have like Will Johnson's frame. He's not a 4.3, low 4.4 flat kind of guy like a Troy Pride. He's a good athlete. He's a very good athlete. You don't have the success he has if you're a mediocre athlete, right? So I'm not saying that Benjamin's not talented. I had him as a top 100 player partly because he's a talented athlete. However, What made Benjamin so unique and special is you could just watch him play and you talk to him, talk to people around him, and you see a kid that's got as high of a football IQ as you're going to have as a corner. Like Benjamin plays the game as much up here as he does anywhere else. And that's what the great corners do.
Sure.
Right? The great corners, like Champ Bailey, like, a lot of people say Deion's the greatest corner ever and all. Deion was a great player. But if I could take any corner of my generation and start my team with, it's Champ Bailey. Champ was an elite athlete, Vince. He ran a 4.3 something at the combine. But Champ was brilliant up here as well. He could play the game upstairs as well as having elite talent. And that's what Benjamin brings to the table, is he is one of the smartest, most focused, locked-in players you're ever going to find.
Yeah.
And that allows him to play at such an elite level. Christian has to learn that part. Christian has to learn, because he's just Benjamin is a naturally quiet, focused, locked-in kid. Christian is more naturally playful and fun, and that's not bad. It's just guys that are like that have to extra kind of learn to focus in.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. You got to know when to flip the switch. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. Like me, I was not the go out and party kind of guy in college. I was like, okay, let's watch some film. And that didn't make me better or worse. It was easier for me. But other guys who cared about being great, but they kind of liked being the life of the party. I don't even mean like in a party. I just mean in the locker room or just staying, they just wanted to kind of enjoy life, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the best ones had to kind of, you've got to make sure that you're prioritizing your time.
And it's definitely possible to do that.
You can have fun and be the life of the party, but
so
I've seen when to.
You've seen it both ways. I've seen it both ways. I mean, you love the kid that's the kid that just lives in the lab, that kind of. That's my kid. My kid lives in the lab. He doesn't give a crap about all that extra stuff. Like, that's who he is. But then he's got a buddy who is the complete opposite, but he's still really, really good because he can flip the switch and do what he needs to do to be good on the football field, at practice and games, et cetera, et cetera.
And most young players are like Christian.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Benjamin's the rare one.
Yeah. Right.
Benjamin's the kind of different guy.
Right.
Most guys they act like teenagers. Like
100%.
That's kind of what they are. And that's not a criticism, but you've got to learn to.
It's not a criticism, but
focus in.
There are times where I wish my kid was more of a teenager at times, to be honest.
But see, he's more like.
But that's just who he is. I mean,
he's more like the kid where it's easier for him to focus in. That's just his natural personality.
Right.
So this isn't a criticism of Christian. It's just an acknowledgement of Christian, like a lot of young kids.
Yep.
He's got to learn to, he was able to get by on just being a better athlete than everybody else a long time.
Yeah.
Now you've got to learn to be a great athlete and a great competitor, but you also have to learn that there is a nuance to this position. Receivers, by and large, take a lot of pride in their craft, the good ones, the ones you're going to have to compete against championships. You have to match that desire to be that guy. Benjamin does that. And that's why Benjamin's a great role model for Christian. Now, the more Christian can do that, the better he's going to be. But that's why I say, Vince, having Chris Mitchell and Bo Collins there is huge for him, because it's all fun and games till you get beat a couple times. Then you're like, screw this film room, now you're beating with the coach. It's because I can't just go out talent everybody now. Let's lock in.
Right.
And certain things get exposed in where you are in your game when you're playing guys like that. And that's going to be great for Christian, because it's like what you say, Vince, you don't know what you don't know till you find out you didn't know it.
Exactly.
Right. And when you're just better than everybody else, like significantly so, and they're not great route runners, you're just going to dominate. You think, I'm ready to dominate. And then you'll play some team in the opener with a great receivers coach and veteran players, and they know how to get off the press and manipulate this and that you haven't seen in practice before, and you don't have an answer for it.
Correct.
Now that he's got to face Bo Collins and Jaden Thomas and Chris Mitchell every day, and then you've got the speed of KK Smith and the speed of Cam Williams. It's like, dude, and then you got Micah Gilbert at 6'2", 215. Like, I got to handle this muscle guy. Like you're getting all this thrown at him. It's going to be great for Christian.
Right.
And that's why I honestly think a breakout's coming for him. The talent's there. The desire to be great is there. And now he's getting pushed in a way that he's never been pushed before. Now, he played some very good players in high school. He played Ryan Wingo and Aaron Scott and Jeremiah McClellan, who signed with Oregon. So he's faced some dudes now, but that's different. Facing dudes in high school is a different animal than facing dudes that are third and fourth year college players. It's a whole different animal, and it's going to make Christian a much better player. And that's why I really believe a breakout's coming, Vince. I really do, because he is. You can just see his reaction to it. Like, okay, Christian's pissed that he keeps getting beat. Getting beat like he's a second late and they're catching a 12-yard comeback.
Right.
He's not getting torched because that's how good he is. But it's just like, but
it's nuanced thing. It's nuanced things that you can adjust and you can fix. And
I liked he didn't like giving up completions. I was like happy that he was pissed. Because like, okay, that's good. It's not just another rep. I'll get him next time. He was, dang it, verbally and visibly like not happy with himself. I'm like, that's good. Right. Now, it wasn't in an unhealthy way where he then starts making mistakes. I'm just like, how I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's why Christian Gray is my easy number one guy when it comes to breakouts. And again, now the question for him is what level breakout? He's going to go from a backup, in my opinion, to a good starter. But is it breakout to where now next year, when we're going into next year, he's the guy getting preseason All-American love? Is it that level of breakout? That's the only question I have. But some type of breakout is for Christian Gray's coming. I think it's going to be kind of in between, star and now dependable starter. I think it's going to be somewhere in between there is what I'm predicting.
There's one more position, and it's not necessarily a player per se. I mean, it is, but it isn't. But it's kind of a position that we think has a potential to be a breakout that we want to talk about, and that is the safety position opposite Xavier Watts. And whoever kind of takes control of that, and I would say this, even if, for example, if Don Schuler is not the starter, he can still be a breakout player with what he does, given the opportunities that he's going to be given, because he's going to play, and he's going to play a lot. It just depends on, who is quote unquote the starter, who's the rotation guy, but then who's going to be in the game when, the game is on the line and things like that. And, that could be either one of these guys, and either one of these guys could definitely be a breakout for sure.
I think both will, actually, now that I think to some degree. I think Rod Hurd is, a guy that his play is going to start getting a lot more national attention for how good he is now that he's at Notre Dame, right? Like that's the thing. So like if the opportunities come to him, kind of like how Kobe Bryant had that breakout in 2022 when he won was it 22 or 21? When he won the Jim Thorpe Award over Sauce Gardner.
Right.
Well, why did he do that? Because nobody threw at Sauce. They were all going at Kobe, and those opportunities opened up for Kobe to have a great year and go out and become an All-American. Now you're in a situation where you have that same situation here at safety, where it's kind of like, well, I don't want to throw at the boundary corner because that's Benjamin Morrison. I don't want to throw at the field safety because that's Xavier Watts. That Christian Gray kid's pretty good too. Well, Rod Hurd, here I come. Let's see what you got. You know what I mean? And it's like those opportunities are going to be there for him to go out and make some of those plays. So like we say, well, Xavier Watts is going to have as many interceptions. Well, maybe those get taken away, from him and they go to Rod Hurd.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Being, just basically those are still picks. There's still turnovers. There's still opportunities for the defense to make plays, but they're going to be a little bit more spread out, and maybe they do get funneled to the field, to the boundary safety. I mean,
the guy that I think has the best chance for a breakout, though, just because of where he's starting from, is a Don Schuler.
Right. Absolutely.
And Christian's my number one breakout play, like definite breakout player. Adon would be next on my list. I'm confident there's going to be a breakout there because he didn't play last year
at all.
He played the only game he ever played a meaningful snap at Notre Dame on defense was the bowl game. That's it. He did nothing. He took a red shirt last year. He came off the bench in like 4 mop-up games and got his red shirt. So I think he's going to be, if not a starter this year, he's going to be that new Ramone Henderson guy.
Yeah.
Where he's that number 3 safety. And
it's crazy that he's only got freshman eligibility, Brian, because you see him walk in the room.
Looks like is that the new GA?
I mean, with his, because he's one of those guys that likes to tuck the jersey underneath, and show off the abs. And it's like,
I don't like that because I've never looked like that.
Exactly.
I kind of feel like if I look like that, I might be like, you know what? I might just do that in the show today. Pull my my shirt up. Let y'all see. You know what I mean? Like,
right, exactly.
If I look like that, I might actually do that. But I mean,
he's got something to show off. I'll just put it that way. So I mean, he does not look like a guy with freshman eligibility. I mean, he's the get off the bus guy. You know what I mean? Like he fits the part. He looks the part. And again, and we've talked about this a bunch, and so I'm not going to completely go down that road. But the fact that he got all the first team reps in the spring was huge for him. I think that was absolutely massive, because he understands what it's like to play next to Xavier Watts. He got to learn. He got to be on the field with the ones. I mean, he was the number one boundary safety all through spring. And so now he's doing a little bit of share time and he's running with the twos, or he's getting some reps with the ones. But that time was invaluable, I think, to his development at this stage in his career. And the fact that he is basically in his first year of eligibility now in the fall, I mean, he is going to be so good when it's all said and done. As long as he stays on the trajectory that we think he's going to be, we're going to look back. We're going to be like, man, that spring was super important.
Oh, huge.
I mean,
huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you just seeing how he conducts himself every day. He's out there chirping at people. And I mean, chirping, I shouldn't say that because that sounds like I'm talking about him trash talking. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about talking to teammates and communicating
and redirecting.
He's going to be a good player. I mean, look, Ramone Henderson is the number 3 safety last year. And I can assure you the Notre Dame coaching staff did not have a ton of confidence in Ramone Henderson last year. They didn't. That's a fact. He still played 304 snaps.
Yeah,
because you have to play. You have to play a third safety.
You need 3.
You have to.
Yeah,
you have to. And they did, and they didn't play him as much as even the year before. Because like the year before, DJ Brown played 505 snaps, and next was Brandon Joseph at 431. Xavier played 366. Ramone played 319, and Houston Griffith played 304. They had 5 guys in 2023 that played at safety, and those were all safeties. There weren't like one of those guys was a nickel that played over 300 snaps. Last year they had 3, and one of them barely was over 300 snaps. And that was Ramone Henderson. The next highest safety was Clarence Lewis, was listed as a safety. He played nickel, right? So you had 708 snaps by Xavier, 595 from DJ, 304 from Ramone. After that, you had Antonio Carter had 72, Don Schuler had 52, Ben Minnick had 15. Like that was your safety rotation last year. Like that was it. Because you just didn't have any faith that beyond the starters, you just didn't have Ramone was simply put him out there to spell the other guys and then get him out as quickly as you can.
Right.
Because your number 3 safety last year in snaps would have ranked tied for 5th in 2022. Because they had more faith than those guys. You had Xavier, and they had more faith than Ramone. He had 319 snaps as part of a 5-man rotation that year. And he was a better player. He regressed last year. I think with Adon, and you could even maybe throw Luke Talich into this conversation because he's another guy that didn't play at all last year. Now is going to probably play a decent amount, probably play a couple hundred snaps. So they're going to be breakouts in that regard. But I think Adon has a chance to be even more than just like Luke Talich to me is going to go from a dude that never played on defense to a solid part of the rotation. Like that's what I think Luke's going to do. That's technically a breakout section. Adon is going to go from a dude that never played to a guy that you're like, well, he's a good football player. And he's ready to go and play a lot of snaps. I think Luke might still be a year away from that, potentially. I'm hoping that I'm wrong on that. We'll see how he is in the end of fall camp. But Luke's in a position where I think he's earned enough confidence to play as a guy that comes off the bench and gives you a couple hundred snaps. That's a good breakout.
Yeah.
Adon, I think, takes it even further.
Oh, absolutely.
And is a guy that's going to, not have as many snaps as maybe Rod and Xavier, but it'll look more like it did 2 years ago than it did last year because of his presence. And that's going to be a big difference.
It's going to be massive. And I think this team, I don't want to say they need both of these guys to break out, but man, if they do, this secondary is on its way to being elite. I mean, that's because that is a position where they will automatically get an upgrade. And so, if they were elite last year and you upgrade one of the positions and everybody else just plays the same, then I like where Notre Dame's chances are. Again, there's the whole Cam Hart argument that we just had, and I get all of that. But if you can upgrade the safety position, which I think they've done, and both of these guys break out, and now you've got a nice 3-man rotation where you're not nervous about putting any one of these three guys on the field, I like it. And I think there may even be times in certain packages where all three of them could be on the field at the same time. I mean, you could see that depending on the offense that they're playing and things of that nature. So, the bottom line is I love what they did in the portal, and I love what they're doing with Adon Schuler in this regard, at safety and at nickel for that matter. But I'm very excited to watch these guys play, specifically Adon Schuler, just because he's the homegrown, so to speak, guy. And I really enjoyed watching him in the spring as well. So he's going to be fun to watch in the fall. So that's going to do it for our.
Because I do want to mention the freshman here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I completely forgot about the freshmen.
Because we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, because where Notre Dame is right now with their returning depth in the two, because of the arrival of the transfers, right now they don't need a freshman to play.
Right.
There's two guys, though, that I'm going to keep my eye on to see how they continue to progress that could help this football team. One is Leonard Moore, who so far, from what I'm told, is having a really good fall camp. I think he's battling Chance Tucker for that number 4 corner spot. And you're an injury away from, if you're the number 4 corner, that means you're an injury away from being the number 3 corner, right? And potentially starting, depending on how they want to handle certain things, depending on, like let's say Benjamin Morrison is out for the Northern Illinois game. Well, do you really want to have Christian Gray go over there and take away reps at field? Or do you say, hey, look, Leonard's a good football player. He can help us beat Northern Illinois, and then we get Benjamin back next week, kind of thing. That's going to be a question mark. And how well he plays is going to tell us a lot, because, he was a guy that was in my intel piece for the summer intel piece about what the staff people raved about what Leonard Moore has done. And that wasn't the first time. That was one of the first bits of intel I got all summer, was somebody called me and was like, dude, this cat Leonard Moore is way better than we thought he was going to. And they liked him a lot, but he's even better than I thought he was going to be. And then, of course, he's done well so far in fall camp. Now, he's thin and skinny, and he's got to get a lot stronger and all that kind of stuff, but he's a very talented football player. It wouldn't shock me if Leonard Moore forces his way into the rotation at some point in time this year. Would not shock me. And from what I'm told, he's part of the reason Notre Dame decided not to go to the portal this summer for a corner. They looked at several corners and were close to getting a couple, but they kind of backed out and they just decided, look, we got these young kids. Let's go coach them up, right? You got this talented kid, go coach them up. And instead of trying to bring a transfer in who's going to be your 3rd or 4th guy. And that's the direction they're going. And then, of course, Bronte Johnson is really far away right now as of today, August 7th. But Vince, man, you saw him at practice. He is long and fast. And you whenever that light goes on for Bronte, he's got a chance to be a pretty good football player. Whether that's next week, next month, next season, 2 years, I don't know when that's going to be. But when a kid is 6'2" and runs and moves like Bronte Johnson, I don't care how far behind he might be right now, he's worth mentioning.
Right.
Because you can't teach that talent, man. You can't teach 6'2" that runs like that and moves like that. You can't. And so he's another guy that I think is worth mentioning. And then special teams wise, again, I think they'd like to redshirt Kennedy Urlacher. They just might not be able to. I just have a feeling Kennedy's going to be one of those guys that you just kind of pound the table on to say, hey, look, we got to figure out a way to get this guy on our special teams. Maybe that's not this year. Maybe they want to put some distance between him and the safety class that's ahead of him. Because remember last year, Vince, all the safeties redshirted last year. So if Kennedy plays this year, he's got the same eligibility as Luke Talich, Adon Schuler, and Ben Minnick.
Good point.
So they may just decide we want to separate him a little bit from them. That could be it. But I think there's at least going to be a conversation at some point in time this year. Do we burn the red shirt because he's got to be a starter for us on special teams? I think that's where he's at. I think Tabron Betty Powell's kid is probably a year away from being in that conversation on special teams. Definitely not in a position to really help you right now. And same with Carson Hobbs. Right now, they're to me, right now, they're both probably take a year, preserve a year.
Gets bigger, stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
take
where
that
I'm at.
time. Makes a lot of sense. And so that is going to do it for our chat on the defensive backfield at Notre Dame going into the 24 season. Thanks for hanging out with us. We've got more to come, so stay tuned. But in the meantime, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, get on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. breakout.com for all of your intel needs, because that's where it's at. So get there and have some fun with it. There's a nice family atmosphere over there, and I've heard it many times about the boards at Irish Breakdown. It's a family-oriented board. It is not the squabbling, fighting nonsense.
Well, there's some people trying to be like that right now, and they're getting dealt with.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just people getting ready for the season, and
there's the point.
And just remember, too, folks that are longtime members, we have new people signing up for the board. And it's not their job to go read 20 pages of posts to make sure that they're not asking a question that has already been asked. So when people ask questions, show some grace. And if people ask a question that you don't like or you don't think they should bring up, then ignore it. It's not your job to tell people they can or can't post certain things. It's my job to do that. and so just remember that. Always this time of year, you always have a lot of new people signing up. So show some grace and show some hospitality, because we had a new person sign up the other day, and he was not treated with that kind of grace, and I was disappointed in the board. But I rarely am. It is a great board, and it's just the last couple days there's been some. Last couple weeks there's been a couple cranky people in there that just feel the need that they just and it's just like, no, we're not going to be that way.
Come on now,
I'm not going to be that way.
Come on now, we're better than that. We're better as a group.
We are.
Let's go. Let's go. So come on down, boards.irishbreakdown.com. You won't be disappointed. Promise.